Hi, my name is Ryan, and I want to demo Volt. Volt is a web framework that lets you build web applications in Ruby using Opal to compile the Ruby to JavaScript on the front end. And Volt gives you kind of a lot of things you'd expect in both a backend framework and a front-end framework. And in addition to that, it gives you a lot of code that automatically handles syncing data between the front end and the back end. So I'm just going to demo this. I'm not really going to explain all the details. There's lots of docs, and I'm going to be working on some more video tutorials soon. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new project called To Do after I've installed the gem, and it's going to go ahead and set everything up. And then we're going to go ahead and open it. And I'm just going to close this, minimize this for now. The first thing we'll look at is our views. So this is kind of our main template view, and we're going to create a new view called To-Dos. And these views are written in a language similar to Handlebars. It's not exactly the same, but if you're familiar with Handlebars, it should seem fairly normal to you. And we're going to create two sections, and sections are denoted with these colons. A title and a body. So we're going to say To-Dos as our header. And then we're going to go ahead and save that, and we need to add a route for it. So we're going to say /todos takes us to the to-dos view. And then if we start our server and load things in Chrome, for example, it goes ahead and brings up our index page. And what we need to do is we need to add a nav link to it. So here, this is actually rendering a sub-template, or a section as we call it. So we can just add a new one for to-dos, and go ahead and grab this and make it so that we can see both as much as possible. And you'll notice when I hit save, the page automatically reloads, which I think is really useful for development. And then we can go ahead and go to to-dos. And so what we want is we want a list of to-dos where we can add one and they kind of automatically show up. So let's go ahead and do a table that loops through each. So we'll call these to-dos, and there's a reason for the underscore. You can kind of find it in the docs. Kind of to keep from making certain mistakes, we prefix things with an underscore when we want to store them kind of in our data stores. So I'm going to say each to-do has a property called label, and then I need to make a form to add them. So I'm going to say when the form gets submitted, it calls add to do. So this e- prefix says I want to bind the submit event to the controller. So our controller here is index. So whenever the form gets submitted, it's going to call add to do. So let me go ahead and I'm just going to paste in the code for the contents of the form. And so what we're doing here, I'm going to change this a little bit, is basically we get Bootstrap by default, so we're kind of adding a little Bootstrap formatting. And we're binding this text input to page, which is our temporary model for the page, and then a property called new to do. So, then what we do is when add to do gets called, which we'll define here, we want to grab that value and stick it into the to-dos array. So we'll go ahead and put that as a hash with label as the name, and we'll grab the current value for new to do. So if I type 1, you can see it adds it to that. We also need to clear out new to do, so we'll say just assign it to empty, and then when we add 2 to the list, you can see it cleared it out. So that's pretty simple, and you can see that this controller code automatically loaded over here. it's not done yet, but we will have it too, where if you were to just hit this URL directly on the initial page load, all of this would run on the back end and spit out the HTML for this, and then tie in the JavaScript to keep making it work. And the reason why appending to to-dos works is we've built in what we call reactive values, which is a form of reactive programming that basically lets everything track what's going on, intelligently know what to update, how to update the document. And a good example of this is we could query to-dos and we could say, give me the size, how many to-dos are there, and if we add more, we get this automatic update. And the models are very intelligent on knowing when and what kind of changes need to update what, and so these automatically get propagated. So part of a to-do list is having checkboxes so that you can check the events off. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll go ahead and create a checkbox, and we'll say that its check state gets bound to completed property on to-do. And what we're going to want is when it is completed, we're going to want to change the styling for the rest of it. So let's just say if the to-do is completed, we'll show the completed class, and then we won't do that. We'll close that. So if I go into my assets, I can go ahead and create a new CSS file with the completed property, or with the completed selector. I'm just going to paste this in. And whenever these get checked, you can see that the properties of the style automatically is reflected. So let me also go ahead and just, for styling's sake, override some Bootstrap stuff here. Set this to auto. Okay, so now we've got a basic to-do list working, and that only took us a couple of minutes. So let's go ahead and make it so we can remove items from the to-do list. This is surprisingly easy as well. Let's see. So we can make a button. We can say whenever that button is clicked, we'll call remove to do, and we'll pass it this index, which is available inside of each loops. We'll just do an X as the close. And in the controller, we'll just say remove to do at the index, and we can just set to dos and then delete at index. And that's all we have to do, and now we have deleting working. Next, let's do, let's go ahead and make it so that we can select select one of these to-dos and then see some more information about it, or put in more information about it. So to do this, I'm going to just copy in some Bootstrap boilerplate, just to kind of section things off. And so what we want here is we want to be able to select one of these. So I guess let's do that first. So we'll go ahead and add a click event on E. And like I said, anything in here inside of the quotes is Ruby code that gets run. So let's set the params model, an index value on the params model, to the current index. So if I save this, and now if I click on here, you'll notice that what it's doing is it's actually storing this in the URL. And so this works both ways. I could copy this in and come back, and that value would get set again. And so what I want to do is I want to say, I also want to, in the class, say if params index, and we'll go ahead and convert to an integer, equals the index, I'll say selected. Enter that down so it's a little clearer. And then we'll go ahead and copy a little CSS, hit save, and now you'll notice that whichever one of these we click on gets highlighted. So next we're going to make it where whenever we click on one of these, we're going to show it over here. So I've added some Bootstrap code, and what we're going to do is we're going to set a current to-do item that is based off of the to-dos list. So we're going to say it's always whatever the to-dos item is at the params index converted to an integer. And because of the way that reactive values work, this will track and get automatically updated. So I can say if current to-do, and then I'll just show its label. And now, if we click on one of these, you can see that it goes ahead and updates over there. And so what I'll do is I will add a text area that binds to a description, and we just put that inside of the text area, and it'll bind to a description property on this. So we could say, let's make some real ones here. And so now this tracks with these fields. Let me show one last thing. One of the overarching principles in Volt is that there should be kind of a unification of interfaces as far as model access goes and kind of data store. So here right now we're on this page model, and so what we could do is if we wanted to store all of our data, you know, everything, so here we say self.currentToDo equals, and so since that's not already set up, it gets passed to page. But what we could do is we could actually change that to store, which backs things by a database, and then we'll go ahead and change one other thing. We'll make this new to-do on the page itself, on the page model, so we'll keep that on the page model, which we did over here. And basically that's all we need to do, and now our items are backed by the database. And what's neat with this is that not only are they backed by a database, but we actually, this is already built to automatically sync up between anyone listening on, or anyone who's using these stores. So, so when I add stuff on one screen, you can see that it automatically syncs to the other, and because we're using page for the selected and the check, sorry, the selected state, it's local to the current machine, but checked, for example, is stored in stores, so that automatically stays. So you can see that's pretty straightforward and a very quick way you can get you know, everything kind of syncing between all of your front end and back end automatically. Anyway, that's Volt. Thanks for taking a look. There's a lot more to it, but just kind of wanted to give you an overview of the core concepts. Please give it a try and let me know your thoughts. Thanks.